If you read the post, Seeing God's Goodness in the Midst of Difficult Circumstances, you know that in the beginning I talked about my family's trip to a canyon. Well, that canyon was Tallulah Gorge, a 1,000-foot deep gorge formed by erosion from Tallulah River in Tallulah Falls, Georgia. That's a lot of Tallulahs. Another important detail in the story is that we were coming home from a camping trip in the Georgia mountains, and we had already been hiking the day before. The previous day, we hiked up the 3,000-foot Black Rock Mountain. Now, this wouldn't be a big deal if you're an outdoorsy type. It wouldn't be a big deal if you frequently go hiking. It wouldn't even be a big deal if you had some type of exercise regimen, but none of the above referred to me. And so when we took this trip, I was not in shape at all, not even a tiny bit. As a result, every single part of my body was in pain. Not to mention, I have been sleeping on an air mattress in the chilly mountainous woods for 2 nights with my hubby and kids. Sis, I was already in a bad condition when we arrived at Tallulah Gorge. I wasn't exactly ready to run a marathon or hike down a 1,000-foot canyon. And so as a result, every step I took to the bottom and then back up again was met with pain. This totally reminds me of 2020 because we have experienced several traumatic events this year. And as we have moved from month to month, there has been a measure of pain associated with moving forward. Many of us still have some lingering pain from the month before. For some of us, the pain is emotional, relational, financial, or physical. We have yet to find resolution with the difficulties of one month before we're faced with more pain in another month. Whether this pain is from this year or maybe even some other time in our lives, it makes moving forward difficult. This is why I talked about Jacob in the devotion. Jacob was one of the patriarchs in the Bible. He was the youngest twin born to Isaac and Rebekah. His name meant deceiver, and rightfully so, because he tricked his brother into trading his birthright for some bread and lentil stew. Jacob eventually leaves. He works for 14 years for 2 wives, has a bunch of kids, and then he returns to meet his brother Esau. On the way, he has an encounter with God. Genesis 32:24 says, "A man came and wrestled with him till daybreak." In verse 24, when the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then in verse 31, it says, the sun rose above him as he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. Can you imagine if every single step you took for the rest of your life was done so with a limp? This was Jacob's lot in life for the rest of his life. Even though he had an incredible encounter with God, his name was changed, and it would be through him that God would fulfill his promise to Abraham, he still had a limp. Every day, he had a vivid reminder of his weakness in comparison to God's supernatural strength. Now, I don't know about you, but inching closer to 2021 has felt a little bit like walking with a limp. This year has definitely been difficult, and it has been tempting to focus on all of the pain we have experienced. Jacob, just like us, had a choice. He could either look at God's goodness in the midst of his painful condition, or he could focus on the condition itself. Yes, this year has been extraordinarily painful, and we cannot deny it or fake the funk, but we can choose to look for glimpses of God's goodness because it is evident. Although Jacob walked with a limp, he went from being a deceiver to one who struggled with God. God changed his name and fulfilled the promise he made to Abraham in his life. Sometimes our greatest place of pain magnifies God's goodness in our lives. So the question we must ask ourselves is, where are we limping? Is it a relational limp, a financial limp, or even a physical limp? And what might God be doing in the midst of our pain? Because God is an intentional God. I believe in the midst of our collective pain this year, God is doing something. He is uprooting mindsets. He is making us more dependent on Him. He is exposing our sin and shifting our focus. In our place of pain, God is moving. He is present and He is good. Wherever we are experiencing pain with each step, may we choose to look for God's goodness in the midst of it.